If you've ever thought about opening a bank account in a foreign country but were worried about the risks, this video is for you. It's not clickbait. I actually have tens of thousands of dollars frozen in an account in Costa Rica, and I'm flying there tomorrow to try to hopefully get some of it back. But before I tell you exactly what happened and why it's stuck there, we need a little bit of backstory. So many years ago, I studied abroad in Costa Rica back in 2002, and that led me to have an opportunity to go back a few years later. And I used to work in real estate and helped people relocate abroad. And one of the things that I would research was how to open a local bank account, because when you live outside of your home country and you move somewhere else, you need a way to be able to send yourself money, receive money, send money back to your home country, and just make everyday purchases, right? Groceries, paying rent, paying bills. And so, there has been this connotation online of offshore banking being like something shady, like opening an account in Switzerland back in the day to hide money for billionaires. But it's really just a foreign bank account is just a bank account in another country, and there's millions of people in that country that open bank accounts there because that's where they live. So I would go around Costa Rica trying to figure out how to open a bank account as a foreigner. And in some cases, you need to have permanent residency. In other cases, they would let you open an account with a passport. But something happened in 2010 that made it really difficult for US citizens holding a passport to open a bank account pretty much anywhere in the world. And this is known as the US Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, also known as FATCA, if you've heard of it before. And what this essentially did was made it very difficult for US citizens to open accounts because it added additional reporting requirements to foreign financial institutions who accepted US customers as clients. So I'm not going to get into why this act was passed or, who it was intended to curtail, but we could just say that it ended up affecting everyday Americans who were living outside of the country and just making our lives really difficult because we couldn't open bank accounts. So at the time I had applied for residency in Costa Rica, but it hadn't gone through yet. So I was going around with my passport trying to open an account, and I found basically like an investment bank called Financiera Desyfin. And they allowed foreigners with passports to open an account, and I was able to get an account in colones and dollars. I deposited like $50 there just to see if it worked. And then I had that account for a while. I don't remember for how long, maybe a few years. And then when I left Costa Rica to become a digital nomad and travel around the world, I decided to invest some money into a CD there and use it as an emergency savings account, because at the time they had pretty good interest rates. So I thought, I have my account in the US. I had bank accounts in a lot of different countries at that time, because every time I went to a new country, I would investigate how to open a bank account there as a US citizen. So I had an account in Canada, accounts in Mexico, Malta, Panama, like all around the world. But I had very limited funds in each of those accounts because, if you're not very familiar with that country, you might not feel comfortable putting a large sum of money there. But I had spent so much time in Costa Rica, and I had the Desyfin account for so long and was on their mailing list, getting all their offers for CDs. I thought, I'll put some money in there. This can be my emergency savings in case something ever happened in the US banking system. I'll have this emergency money in Costa Rica that's totally unrelated to what's happening in the US. And this was after the financial crash of '08, to kind of put things into context. So there were a lot of fears around US banking, people losing their investments. And although we have FDIC insurance in the US, still it's not a bad idea in theory to diversify your funds around the world in different currencies and different bank accounts. But if you do that, just realize that you're opening yourself up to additional risk in those countries, even if something were to happen where that money could be safe. So I'll give you, a few pointers as to what I've learned in this situation and what I would do differently next time in case you're thinking of opening an account in a different country. But to go back to the Desyfin situation, over the years, I've actually closed all of my bank accounts abroad, and I can make a separate video on that. But one of the reasons is because I pretty much use a Wise account for everything now. This video is not sponsored, of course, but that Wise International account I opened in 2012, and it just lets you transfer money to pretty much anywhere. So it really reduced the need to have so many bank accounts in different countries. So I closed almost all of the accounts over the years. The only one account I had left was one business account in Costa Rica and this savings account at Desyfin. And I had the CD there. It expired last year, so I asked them for the paperwork and the transfer instructions to be able to send the money to my US account or somewhere else, maybe reinvest it, buy a house, something. And yeah, they sent me the documents to be able to transfer the funds. And when I sent the documents back, I never received confirmation or any reply over email. So I emailed again, still didn't get a reply. And I thought that's weird because they usually reply the same day. So I went online and I went to the website, and lo and behold, the website was down, and there's this big notice in Spanish from the Costa Rican Financial Regulatory Authority saying that the bank had basically been shut down and was under investigation for mismanagement of funds. So immediately when I saw that, I thought, okay, for sure, all of my money is gone because this is a disaster. Like, if you see something like this, outside of your home country, your first worry is like, okay, I've lost all of the money. So I, just felt sick to my stomach because I had just sent the wire transfer information to request it to be sent back to me in the US. And yeah, it was just really bad timing. But it's important to note that Desyfin wasn't an actual, government-owned bank or an official bank in Costa Rica. It's actually categorized as a Sociedad Financiera No Bancaria. So this means a non-bank financial institution, which we're familiar with in the US and other countries as well. So it can take deposits, offer loans, issue bonds, provide credit. It is supervised and regulated by SUHEF, which is the Costa Rica financial regulator, and it has, oversight just like any other bank, but it's not technically a bank. So that is something to know, that it is more high risk than a bank. It doesn't have the same deposit protections as a bank, and that's, in hindsight, probably why they offered higher interest rates than the normal banks did. So that should have been a red flag for me at the time. But, I had friends who had invested a lot of money there, hundreds of thousands of dollars, who had business accounts there, and they had offices all around Costa Rica. It was a very professional organization. I didn't see any cause for concern at the time. But I just wanted to point that out because it's something that you definitely want to check if you're opening an account anywhere. I mean, we've seen this a lot in the US and other countries as well when it comes to fintech companies, like Bitcoin exchanges that shut down for misuse of funds, and then there's class action lawsuits against it. Like, of course, every time you make an investment, there is a risk that you could lose all of the funds, you could lose the principal, interest, but of course you hope that that doesn't happen to you. In this case, it did happen to me. Hopefully I won't lose the entire thing. I'll get to that next. But in the US, in normal bank accounts, we're used to having FDIC insurance, which insures up to $250,000 of funds. I don't know if there's ever been a situation where, the whole country had to go to the government to make their FDIC insurance claims, but I mean, that would be a whole separate disaster. But anyway, most countries don't insure bank deposits to that level of money. I've done a quick search online just to see what is the range of insurance coverage at international banks, and it goes from 0. In some cases, there's plenty of countries that don't have insurance for any sort of bank deposits, and it looks like the US is the highest at $250,000. It looks like Canada is around $100,000, and in Europe it could be up to maybe 100,000 euro depending on the country. Asia seems to have lower deposit limits, as well as Latin America, that could range from $10,000 to up to $50,000. So if you do have money in an international institution, make sure you know exactly how much your deposit is insured for and what happens if that bank fails and how you would get your money back. So very important. But in this case, let's see, I found out that Desyfin, SUHEF began investigating Desyfin back in January of last year, which I didn't know because I don't follow the Costa Rican news so closely, and I don't even know if that was public information at the time. I don't know if they would make it public if they're investigating somebody, but it wasn't until August 13th that CONACYF, the National Council for Supervision of the Financial System, acting on a recommendation from SUHEF, decided to intervene with Desyfin. They found irregular and risky management, undervalued loan provisions, and an equity ratio below 8%. So August 13th, I believe, was the day that the website got shut down and everything kind of got shut down, and they continued that investigation. They discovered a lot of things. We don't need to go into detail. You could also Google it, but it looks like about 4,200 depositors had all of their funds frozen immediately, and that's why no one replied to my email to wire the money to the US that day. But they eventually came up with a recovery plan. This has been ongoing for the past year. It's been very stressful. And they've decided to reimburse the deposit holders for 6 million colones worth of their deposit, which is the guaranteed amounts at banks in Costa Rica. That comes out to around less than $12,000 right now if you were to convert it to US dollars. There were more than 1,000 deposit holders, myself included, that had more than $12,000 saved there, and we will get 48.97% of the additional balance back on top of those 6 million colones. So I feel cautiously optimistic that I will be getting something back. I'm not in the clear yet. I'm going to Costa Rica tomorrow because I have until the end of this week to present myself in person and provide bank information to be able to transfer the 6 million colones and also the 50% of the balance to another account in Costa Rica this August. And because I'm not Costa Rican, I don't have a digital ID in Costa Rica, I'm not living there right now, I have to go in person, and I hope everything goes smoothly. I actually need to now open another bank account to be able to receive that money because it has to go to a bank account in Costa Rica. It can't be sent to the US. So I'm kind of back where I started with, I closed all my bank accounts, and now I actually closed the last one in Costa Rica in February, which was my business account that I don't use anymore. And now I'm going back to open more bank accounts and hopefully be able to do that to be able to present the bank information in their offices this week. So we don't know exactly what will happen. I have been calling all of the banks in Costa Rica, researching, talking with my lawyer, my accountant, and trying to figure out which banks are currently allowing US citizens with passports to open accounts there. It seems like there are at least 3 options. So fingers crossed. And I wanted to make this video to share what happened and my mistakes with you so that you can avoid them in the future. Hindsight is 2020. No one's perfect. People make mistakes. And I think that the feeling of regret is one of the worst emotions to feel as a human being, because you're feeling remorse for something that happened in the past that maybe you could have changed or you had power over, but because it's in the past, you can't change it now. And it's such a limiting feeling because there's really nothing you can do other than reflect on the lessons that you learned that led to those feelings. And I don't regret much from my life, to be honest. Probably selling all of my Bitcoin back in like 2014, 2015. I still have some, but I sold most of it back then. So I would say I probably regret that. I definitely regret opening an account here or, putting money in an investment there. It could have been worse. You know, I know people that had 6 figures of money that got tied up there. So I didn't have that much, but it was still a significant amount, you know. But yeah, the truth is that we can't change what happened in the past. Tiny things that happen in an instant, like a car accident, an injury, saying something that you regret to someone said something to you, like something that can happen in a second can then have long-term ramifications. And so it's just a reminder to, you know, be really thoughtful about your interactions, your plans for your life, and especially if you're going to be opening an account internationally, that you definitely do your research, decide what you're comfortable with, and if that means having, you know, below the minimum guaranteed deposit in each account, then so be it. So if you want to find out what happens, make sure to subscribe to my channel, hit your notifications bell so you can watch the next video coming later this week about whatever happens when I get to Costa Rica tomorrow. And I'll also publish another video in August following up and letting you know if I get that money. And if you want to know why I left Costa Rica in the first place and why many expats and US citizens leave, then watch this video next.